Hi everyone, and welcome to the final day of the 2022 Publish What You Pay Global Assembly. So as people are coming in to join, I am going to just run through some of the technical aspects of the platform. This session will take place in English and French. To hear interpretation in Spanish, French, Arabic, English, or Russian, please go to the Sessions tab on the right-hand side of your screen in the white area, and then go to the Translations tab just below that. You can select your language from the drop-down menu. Remember that you will need to mute all of the speakers in order to hear the interpretation clearly. You can do that by clicking on the Mute All button when you select your language. If you are joining from a phone, please note that you can only access interpretation through a browser, not through the Hopin app. You will see a small grey arrow in a circle in the bottom right of the screen. So if you click this button, you will see the option for translation. To access the chat for this session, please make sure that you are in the Sessions tab on the right side of your screen and select Chat just below that. Please introduce yourselves in the chat and send a message here if you are having any technical challenges. If you would like to ask a question to any of the speakers, please do so in the Session Q&A tab. Please avoid using the chat for the questions to the speakers. We're much more likely to see questions in the Q&A tab, so they're much more likely to get answered if you post them there. Okay, so let's get started. The title of this session is Leadership and Governance. These are two really important aspects of our movement. Effective leaders chosen by members from the membership are an important way for our movement to be representative, and maintaining strong governance standards is how we ensure that we are accountable. With those principles in mind, we will be hearing today from Elena Pavlenko, Chair of the Global Council, and from Elisa Peter, Executive Director of the International Secretariat, on their highlights from the last 3 years since our last Global Assembly in Dakar in January 2019. Global Council member Gloria Majiga and I will present updates to the governance manual and a new global gender policy for adoption. And we will also have an opportunity to hear from the new Global Council members who you have elected over the past 3 months at a series of regional Publish What You Pay meetings. So we have a lot to get through, and I will now invite Elena and Elisa to the floor, and I will hand over to Elena to begin her presentation. Thank you.
Hello, dear colleagues, dear Publish What You Pay family. My name is Elena Pavlenko. I am the chair of the Publish What You Pay Global Council. I also represent Eurasia region, and I'm happy to share this report on behalf of the Publish What You Pay Global Council. And also, I would like to highlight that this report covers that everything what happened from Dakar, from the decision in Dakar in 2019. The next slide, please. Yes, I'll start from inclusion. If you remember, in 2019, there was a huge Publish What You Pay members campaign to pay more attention to the gender issues and including gender into the EITI standard. We have our success. We have the successful results. There was new EITI standards which actually included the gender requirements to the obligations of the EITI member countries. Also, we started to review our internal governance manual, Publish What You Pay governance manual, and it was adopted on the last Global Assembly, and actually it also has principles of the gender balance on the Global Council. Also, since then, the Africa Steering Committee has also made that commitment, and the Global Council has overseen the development of Publish What You Pay's first gender policy, which we'll be putting forward for adoption later today. And finally, I also am happy to inform and welcome our youngest ever Global Council member, the new Global Council member, Nora Hassan, who is 24, and we will meet her later today. I also wanted to highlight very shortly that since this meetings of the Global Council, the GC meetings, most of them are open for observers. The next slide, please. Growth. Since the last Global Assembly, we have welcomed new coalitions in India, Lebanon, Kosovo, South Sudan, and Colombia, and new members in Kuwait. This brings the total number of Publish What You Pay coalitions up to 51. Colombia is the first ever national Publish What You Pay coalition in Latin America, and the Caribbean, which is a significant milestone and means that this movement is now truly global. And I'm really happy that it happened now, and we are growing. And I really, really wish Publish What You Pay family to further grow globally in all continents. The next slide, please. Learning. As we began the implementation of our Vision 2025 strategy, we initiated an annual membership survey to help to track progress and lessons across our movement. I want to take this opportunity to thank all the national coordinators who contribute to the survey each year. So now we see and we can see the global trends and challenges and understand how different coalitions, what they feel, what their plans are, and what they feel. For example, we are making concerted efforts to highlight and share the work of Publish What You Pay members. And we are noticing that coalitions are increasingly reporting that they are doing things differently after being inspired by the work of other coalitions, and to engage more in cross-border projects and joint advocacy. I think this is a good plan for the future, and probably we will develop our horizontal cooperation even more actively in the future. I also wanted to say that we have shared the Publish What You Pay experience from different coalitions with the EITI consultants and members, those working groups who now are focused on revision of the EITI standards for the future. And we really believe that your experience, the experience of Publish What You Pay coalitions, will be taken into account when the new revision of the EITI standard will finish. And we will see something new and even better. The next slide, please. Solidarity. So the COVID pandemic has showed the trend that for many years, we saw for many years that the restrictions of rights for civil society organizations even increased when the communication decreased globally. So in the last 3 years, the Global Council has published statements on condemning crackdowns on civic space in Myanmar, Philippines, Niger, Kazakhstan, as well as standing in solidarity with, thank you very much again, with my country, with Ukraine. I also wanted to highlight that Publish What You Pay coalition tried to help a lot Publish What You Pay US coalition to discuss how to move out some US companies from the EITI board, which actually did not support EITI implementation in the US. We also expressed our support to Publish What You Pay EU to advocate some changes into the European legislation. And if any of the members of our Publish What You Pay family need such support at the national level, again, I think all the coalitions will be happy to provide such support. Thank you very much. With this, let me pass the floor to Elisa Peter, our Executive Director, who made tremendous work to make our coalition work on so high professional level to grow and to feel really happy and united. Elisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Oliena, for a comprehensive report and for your nice words. I was only modeling your own leadership skills, and it was a great pleasure to work with you, Oliena, over the past couple of years as you acted as the chair of the Global Council. So thank you so much. I will be speaking in English. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining this final day of Publish What You Pay's first ever virtual Global Assembly. We've had more than 400 participants join over the past 3 days for conversations and celebrations to mark the 20th anniversary of this incredible movement of committed and inspiring activists. So happy birthday to all of us at Publish What You Pay. I am so proud to have been a part of this journey for the past 6.5 years. And I'm really honored to be here today to present this final report back from the International Secretariat to the Publish What You Pay Global Assembly on my last day in the role of Executive Director. So I'm going to focus on 4 key messages as I reflect on the past 3 years since our last Global Assembly, which took place in Dakar in Senegal in 2019. And I will finish also, as Oliena did, with some reflections about the future. Next slide, please. So the first message I want to share with all of you is about resilience. At the last Global Assembly, we adopted our Vision 2025 strategy with our 4 global goals. And I'm sure you all know them by heart by now. To be informed, to be influential, to be heard, and to be connected as a movement. Throughout 2019, the Secretariat consulted on its operational plan to put that strategy into action, with an initial 3-year plan for the Secretariat for 2020, 2021, and 2022. As we and all of you prepared to start implementing our global strategy at the start of 2020, the world faced a once-in-a-generation challenge of the COVID-19 pandemic. We were no longer able to travel or to meet in person, and many of us faced serious personal and financial challenges and hardship. Despite this, Publish What You Pay members found innovative ways to remain connected, to stay informed, to make their voices heard, and to be resilient. I'll share a few examples now. In 2020, Publish What You Pay members on the EITI International Board contributed to an in-depth review of the EITI validation process, culminating in the adoption of a revised validation model safeguarding the EITI civil society protocol, for which Publish What You Pay has fought over the past 10 or 15 years. Another example, Publish What You Pay members and the Secretariat also coordinated really effectively to secure the freedom and safety of activists who had been imprisoned or under threat in Niger and in the Republic of Congo. In August 2021, PWYP members from Mozambique, Tanzania, and Uganda presented their work on fiscal reform and gender equality to the Pan-African Parliament. This was the first time that PWYP has had a presence at this event. Also in 2021, PWYP members and partners held a 2-week webinar series to push for a feminist natural resource governance agenda, an agenda that continues to gain momentum today. And just a couple of months ago, in April, PWYP Canada helped to secure a commitment by the government to a public and searchable beneficial ownership registry, which will now be accessible before the end of 2023. So if that's not resilience, what is it? Next slide, please. So the second message I want to emphasize is impact. Since the last Global Assembly, we've launched the Disclose the Deal campaign, which is now being led by more than 18 national coalitions around the world to ensure that commitments made under the EITI are being implemented so that deals can be properly scrutinized and challenged when necessary. Just a couple of weeks ago, young PWYP activists in Madagascar staged a flash mob to raise awareness about the government's and companies' responsibility to publish the terms of their agreements on natural resource extraction. In December last year, the International Chamber of Mining and Metals, ICMM, announced that its 28 member companies, mining companies, committed to disclosing all licenses granted or entered into from the 1st of January 2021. If implemented, this commitment has the potential of creating a new wave of disclosures throughout the mining sector. And our coalitions in Ukraine and in Mali have also secured significant commitments from their governments to disclose more contracts. Another example of impact is related to our gender work. We have worked with civil society partners to develop 18 gender equality policy asks for UN Women's Generation Equality Forum, which are now being used more widely. And as we prepare for the global EITI conference next year, PWYP members are actively contributing to ensuring that the EITI standard upholds principles of gender equality, as well as strengthening the expectations we have of the companies that are part of the EITI and holding them to account. Next slide, please. So this is about resources and money. So during the pandemic, the International Secretariat repurposed our core funding to provide sub-grants directly to members. In 2019, so 3 years ago, we made 25 sub-grants worth a total of just over $700,000 US. By 2021, last year, we made 32 grants, which totaled more than $1 million US to PWYP members. Over the last 3 years, a total of about 27% of the Secretariat's funding has been sub-granted to support member organizations on the ground. While the majority of this was core funding from the Secretariat, we also undertook joint fundraising for projects with coalitions in Tanzania, in Uganda, Mozambique, Iraq, Lebanon, Kenya, Senegal, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Kyrgyzstan, and Ukraine, and worked with these coalitions to implement projects, including with two new bilateral donors, the Norwegian and the Finnish governments. Next slide, please. People. So as the movement has grown, we have also seen growth at the Publish What You Pay Secretariat since the last Global Assembly. We are now about 20 people at the International Secretariat spread across 10 countries. And in line with our Vision 2025 strategy and operational plan, we have created a new department of communications and campaigns, which is now a team of 3 people. As part of our BUILD grant from the Ford Foundation for institutional strengthening, we have created a monitoring, evaluation, and learning role to keep track of our impact. And we've also created a regional coordination role for Latin America and the Caribbean. And as Oliena said, it's the first time that we have a secretariat's presence on that continent because of demand from organizations across Latin America. In order to manage the increased operational responsibilities, the Finance and Operations Department now includes an operation manager, as well as a sub-grants coordinator to help effectively handle and manage all the sub-grants we're making to Publish What You Pay member organizations around the world. So you can see the details of all the Secretariat staff on our website, and I know that all of them are really looking forward to meeting you in person as soon as travel restrictions begin to ease and we're able to start meeting in person again. Next slide, please. The future. So looking to the future, the combined impacts of climate change and the transition to a low carbon economy is going to have a profound impact on the extractive sector, on people, and on communities in resource-rich countries, but also on our own work. Demand for fossil fuels will inevitably decrease with the risk of stranded assets, while demand for transition minerals is set to skyrocket, as we've heard on the panel a couple of days ago on the energy transition. It is my conviction that Publish What You Pay's expertise on networks and collective power must be leveraged to ensure that this energy transition is fair, is equitable, and is transparent. The adoption by the Global Council of our first ever position on the energy transition last year positions us very well to play our part and to establish new, broader coalitions with others, such as the climate justice movement. So while the future will always be unpredictable, I remain confident that we, as a family, as a movement, have what it takes to continue to challenge the powers to be and to hold them to account. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Elisa and Elena, for those really insightful reflections of all of the work that you've been leading over the last 3 years. I want to just really encourage everyone who's joined today to put forward questions for Elisa and Elena if you have them. As we mentioned at the beginning of this session, part of our commitment is around being accountable, and here we're really putting Elena and Elisa on the spot and allowing you all the opportunity to ask them any direct questions that you might have about their work over the last 3 years. I'm seeing a couple of messages that audio is not clear, so I just want to check. Elisa and Elena, can you guys hear me? That might just be an individual issue. Okay. So if people are having trouble with the audio, it's always a good idea to just refresh your browser, maybe leave the session and rejoin it. So try that. So yeah, please do feel free to post questions in the chat, post questions in the Q&A section, and we can put those to Elena and Elisa. So just while we're waiting for people to ask those questions, Elisa, I wanted to just come to you first. One of your slides there was a people slide, and we saw quite a lot of new roles in the International Secretariat over the time that you've been Executive Director. And I wondered if you could just tell us why you think that's been an important effort to grow the Secretariat in that way and to bring on those specific roles that you mentioned. If you could just kind of tell us a bit about what why that's been important and what impact it is having that you're seeing. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think that's a really important question because you've all heard me say over the years that the goal was never to increase the size of the Secretariat beyond what we really needed in terms of supporting the movement, right? Like the idea is never to kind of have an inflated Secretariat, but very much to make sure that our resources are channeled to the members on the ground. But in order to be able to do that effectively, we do need hands on deck at the Secretariat. So the way we've grown the Secretariat is, I think, in a very kind of thoughtful way, which has been underpinned by how, which roles are needed to contribute to more impact by the movement. When I first joined PWYP 6.5 years ago, there was a lot of focus on network health and network governance and ensuring that our coalitions were well structured with good oversight mechanisms, support for national coordinators. And while this is still important, we've started shifting as part of our strategy Vision 2025 towards supporting more network impact. What do I mean by impact? I mean advocacy campaigns or advocacy projects at local, national, or regional and global levels, seeing more coalitions engaged in affecting the norms that regulate the extractive sector. So that could be affecting governance or policies related to the extractive sector, not only at the national level, but at the global level. And that's what the campaign Disclose the Deal on contract disclosure is trying to do, is to try to elevate the issue and make contract disclosure a global norm by having not the Secretariat only or one or two coalitions, but a number, dozens of coalitions working in a concerted manner to deliver impactful messages and impactful policy recommendations to governments and international organizations. Well, in order to do that, what do you need? You need money, you need strong communication support, and you need people who are able and have experience in global campaigns. So the roles that we've created in the past 3 years are to respond to those needs. In order to raise money, you need people who are expert in fundraising. So we created that role of fundraising manager at the Secretariat, someone who's able to write in a powerful and convincing way to convince existing but also new donors to give us money for the work we do. In order to convince those donors, we need to be able to demonstrate our impact, to demonstrate the difference you make on the ground. And in order to do that, we needed to create a role of monitoring, of a monitoring, evaluation, and learning expert. So we created that role, who sits in Nairobi in Kenya, to be able to track your impact, package it, sell it to donors so that we can give you additional resources to continue and deepen the impact you're having. We also identified the need for more communication capacity at the Secretariat, hence that new department of communication and campaigns, which sits alongside the member engagement department and the finance and operations department, and is really what gives the oomph to the members to get their campaigns coordinated across coalitions. And Disclose the Deal, I think, is a great example of how, through the use of sub-grants, the use of communications templates, joint speaking points, we've been able, I hope, to support your efforts in getting your governments and companies to account for the deals they're signing around extractive resources. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you so much, Elisa. So I'm seeing a few questions come through in the Q&A. So I think I'll pose this one to you, Elena, which has come in from Fuad. So he's thanking you for the presentations, and he says, with specific regions, which specific regions have the most serious difficulties in implementing the EITI standards and in gaining cooperation with government, companies, civil society? And so he's saying particularly in the post-Soviet space. And if you could maybe speak to some of the difficulties that you might have kind of seen with EITI implementation over the 3 years, Elena, that you have been chair of this global council. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. And I would say that when we have a global council meetings, we I never noticed that we discussed discussed or divided the movement into regions. We would rather speak, if we speak about some situations or coalitions, we would rather go to the very particular country. So if there is something happening in Iraq, for example, there was an issue there. We discussed how we can help Iraq with EITI implementation. When there was problem in Kazakhstan, the same. We discussed how and when we can help there. There were this request from the Publish What You Pay US, and we not only discussed it within the Publish What You Pay, we also engaged EITI board members from the civil society side. So I wouldn't divide our work and compare the regions. Again, for me personally, every country is unique. Every country has its own issues, how it implements the EITI and what problems civil society has there. But it also helps, it also shows that if we organize campaigns globally, you have to go to the national level, and you have to, for example, if you organize exchange of experience, or if you organize some learning sessions, you have to deal with this national level. It will bring much more specificity, like concrete issues and examples, which other coalitions will be happy to learn. I just wanted to also to mention Eurasia region. When we started to discuss open contracts within the Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Azerbaijan, and Ukraine, we understood that we cannot, apply the same demands or the same goals for all 4 countries. Every country had, coalition had their own goals, ideas, focus, and priorities. But at the same time, it is so great to meet sometimes together and exchange where we are and how we can help each other. So I cannot, again, I cannot say about the regions, but I'm happy to discuss the country by country issues and examples.
Thanks, Elena. And I think that's a great way as well to kind of share a bit about the role of the Global Council versus maybe sort of other roles in the coalition. So the Global Council has a very kind of particular role when it comes to the type of support that they're able to play around the EITI implementation challenges. And thanks for highlighting those examples. There are a couple of questions coming through, one from Joe Kraus, one from Isami around the energy transition. So maybe I'll ask Elisa to respond first, but Elena as well. So really they're asking about the sort of specific strategies that we're developing as Publish What You Pay, and where do you see Publish What You Pay adding particular value in this debate, in this crisis of the energy transition, and how do we as a global movement come together to have impact in this area? So Elisa first, but then I think Elena, it would be great to have your thoughts on that too. Thanks.
Thank you for those questions. I think Publish What You Pay has such a critical role to play to support a fair energy transition. And that's because there's very few other global movements out there who know the extractive sector as well as we do. So the oil, gas, and mining sector. We've been engaging with that sector for over 20 years. We know the political economy of the fossil fuel industry. We understand the challenges related to the governance of oil, gas, and minerals. And we have been successful in getting those companies and the governments to disclose information they never really wanted us to have in the first place. So we also know how to get them to account for their operations. And I think all of that is going to be critical to leverage to ensure that this energy transition is a transition that is participatory in nature, where citizens, especially those living in countries that are heavily dependent on revenues from fossil fuels, have a seat at the table to discuss and decide the pace of the transition, the pace of fossil fuel phase out, and the type of compensations that will be needed to ensure that the workers, the communities, and the small businesses that depend at the moment on fossil fuels are given the time and the fiscal space necessary to adjust and survive in a low carbon economy. The fact that we're a global movement is also really important. What does a fair energy transition means to Publish What You Pay? In essence, it means a transition where those countries that have historically been emitting the most CO2 into the atmosphere and benefited from the economic development that resulted from a carbon heavy development path are the first one to transition out of fossil fuel extraction. So that means countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, but also Norway, Australia, and others who have economies that can withstand a rapid phase out of fossil fuels because their economies are already very diversified. So we have Publish What You Pay members in those countries that can advocate in those countries for a fast, quick energy transition, while also advocating for additional financial and technical assistance for countries which are heavily reliant on fossil fuel revenues, such as Angola, Nigeria, Iraq, where 90% of the revenues that the government has comes from the sale of oil. So I think the fact that we have that expertise, we have that deep, intimate knowledge of the industry, and that we're a global movement that can put pressure both in the North and in the Global South, I think makes us an invaluable player in ensuring that this transition is done in a way that is, again, just, participatory, and transparent. Thanks.
Thanks, Elisa. Elena, would you like to add?
Yes, thank you. I think that Publish What You Pay has really unique role here, because when we talk about decarbonization and ending of use of fossil fuels, extractive sector will not disappear anyway. There will be extraction of critical minerals, and all the problems which we have with fossil fuels will also be with the extraction of critical minerals. And the same question will arise for the local communities, for the human rights activists, for the environmental organizations. So I really believe that all these questions, not only about environmental protection, but also anti-corruption and all other things which Publish What You Pay is focused on, will stay, even if we will get rid of fossil fuels. And so we definitely can continue on this path, and I believe there will be a huge demand from local coalitions to still cooperate on this. And the second part of this question is how Publish What You Pay should transform its policy, its strategy towards the fossil fuels development, because what we also hear from the local national coalitions that, as actually Lisa said, there are still a lot of countries which heavily depend on fossil fuels production. And we have to think how to support local people, local communities, to restructure the economy of these countries, not to fall into extreme poverty when we end use of fossil fuels in the future. This is such a complex question. We cannot focus, unfortunately, on something very narrow. We have to think professionally and be wise if we really, really want to keep people wealthy and healthy and prosperous in all parts of the continents. Thank you.
Thanks, Elena. I want to slightly switch focus now. There's Elena, in your presentation, you mentioned the solidarity and the role that the Global Council has been playing in highlighting some of the civic space issues that we've been seeing in the movement. They're increasing. And I wanted to ask you first, what you're seeing. Are we seeing enough, do you think? This is a pretty big question, from governments in response to these challenges. Are we actually seeing the response that we're looking for when it comes to us calling out these types of things? And do you think there's a role for Publish What You Pay to be doing more, perhaps, to be calling out the civic space issues that we're seeing, particularly as these energy transition issues that you've mentioned around critical minerals are going to come to the fore? And then, Elisa, I wanted to ask with a slightly more sort of practical hat on. There's a question from Erica Toga, who's saying that, you know, they're looking in Cameroon for more financing to support the work on civic space. So I wondered if you might be able to speak to whether this is a priority for the Secretariat, or how the Secretariat is looking to try and support that work. So maybe Elena first, and then Elisa. Thanks.
Thank you. So in Publish What You Pay Global Council, what we see is that if something is happening on the ground, yes, in one particular country, the first thing what coalition is doing, it comes to the Publish What You Pay Global Council Secretariat and ask for help. So they rely and they expect that if something happens, there will be some support from the global movement, that they will fill this back, yes, behind them. And whether we are successful, of course, it is we cannot say that we are 100% successful in all cases. We always have to expect and demand more from ourselves and from the government and from other stakeholders. But what I see that if we insist, if we unite all together and insist on support or solving this particular problem in particular country, we have results. And I can mention Iraq case. I can say that in Ukraine also there were issues with civic space, and we also managed to solve this problem. So again, not in 100% cases we can say yes, we did everything on 100%, but we definitely feel and see that if there is a unity around one particular problem in the country, and when the global movement has an instrument, yes, to influence the government through the EITI, through, I don't know, government, through companies, I don't know, through any other international organizations, if you have these channels developed and if you help your national coalition to push further this issue, there will be definitely much better result than the coalition is alone. And again, Publish What You Pay was designed to help national coalitions. So yes, this is a question which we should take care of at the global level for the future.
So I agree with Oliena. I think the trends around closing civic space continue to be really alarming. And every time Civicus, for instance, produces an annual report on the state of civil society, it's bringing a darker picture to light. So as Oliena says, civic space is the lens through which we at the Publish What You Pay Secretariat do everything we do. We do not have a dedicated role anymore on civic space, partly because we wanted to streamline civic space across all the roles at the Secretariat. So everybody at the Secretariat is invested in supporting members when they're facing threats and intimidation. On fundraising, so as some of you know, especially for Francophone West Africa, last year we ran a capacity building and training project with a partner organization called AEDH. And so while Publish What You Pay will never be a human rights organization, we're, I think, increasingly able to partner with organizations that are experts in the human rights field and the protection field. So whether it's Amnesty or AEDH in France or organizations like Civicus or Frontline Defenders, we're increasingly working and have, I think, great relationships now to make sure that we can react quickly in times of crisis. In terms of fundraising, we're having conversations with some of Publish What You Pay's traditional donors. So donor organizations such as Luminate, which now have a priority around supporting what they call voice and dissent, so supporting civil society organizations, citizens, and movements in general to be able to take part in the political life in their respective country. So Luminate might be interested in funding not only the Publish What You Pay Secretariat, but some of the coalitions in those countries where voice and dissent is restrained. But we're also speaking, as you know, to Open Society Foundation, you know, a donor that incubated Publish What You Pay for many years and is really invested at the moment in Ukraine to support the voice of civil society organizations in Ukraine with fighting against the war and preparing for rebuilding an open society. as well as with the Hewlett Foundation, who's really interested also in issues of civic space. So with all these donors, we're currently in conversations to try to ensure that we secure funding either for the Secretariat and or to channel funding to member organizations, or to enable members to directly access funding from those foundations.
Great, thank you. So we are going to have to wrap this session up, but I wanted to finish with a question from Abu Bakrin that he's posted. So he's said, recognizing that the challenges are huge, what would you say is, he would like to hear 3 priority actions from you. I'm going to ask if you can just limit yourselves to 1 each. What's the one thing that each of you would say, you know, for the coming 5-10 years for Publish What You Pay, that we really need to focus on and sort of get right as a movement in order to face up to this plethora of challenges? That's a really tough question, I recognize, but if you could just pick one thing, and maybe I'll go to Elisa first and then to Elena.
That's a great question. To me, what will make Publish What You Pay a powerful force for change is when we're able to act as one, to act across 51 countries, across 1,000 member organizations, to pull those resources together and act and speak as one on issues related to corruption and the energy transition. So I guess my plea would be to continue to work across borders on transnational advocacy campaigns in a way that's impacting the governance of the sector. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Elisa. That's great. Elena, in 30 seconds.
Yes, so I will come back to my ordinary role as just a member of the Publish What You Pay coalition, and I'm just trying to understand what I want from the Publish What You Pay for the next 5 years as just a member of coalition. And I think I want to have a place where I will be heard. I will receive a support if needed, and where I will feel that I will be protected. So I think these 3 things will be important for me as a Publish What You Pay member in Ukraine. And I think it's pretty the same. I just echo what Elisa said. But just one more recommendation or suggestion for the next Global Council member. With all these challenges around, I think it's really probably the time to do some strategic session, yes, and to strategize together on the next 5-7 years how to focus the moment for the future. Thanks.
Great, thank you both so much, and thanks for that very clear recommendation on strategy at the end, Elena. Yeah, really appreciate your reflections and your report back to the Global Assembly today. So before we move to our next set of presentations, we are going to hear again from some of the pioneers of the Publish What You Pay movement, who we recorded in a short film, especially to celebrate our 20th anniversary. And so we're going to screen that short video again just now for everyone.
Il y a un proverbe tunisien qui dit « Une seule main ne peut pas taper ». Nous devons être plusieurs mains pour avoir beaucoup de bruit et taper ensemble.
Publish What You Pay provides a network of civil society activists connected around the world in their struggle to make sure that citizens are benefiting from natural resources.
To help poor and disadvantaged communities that are affected by the exploitation of mineral resources, to have a say, to have a voice.
Publish What You Pay has evolved. As the network has brought on new members, we are seeing now young the movement. And of course, that also represents new dynamism, but also it represents new ideas and also new approaches towards our campaigns.
So far, we've been really focusing on the revenue streams and the contract accountability and the beneficial ownership issues, all of which are important and we must continue with. But this elephant in the room we simply can't ignore.
Ang mundo ay nasa punto ng isang matinding pagbabago. Ito ay ang pagbabago ng klima at upang maiwasan ang matinding pinsala na ito, ay napapanahon ng bilisan natin ang pagtransisyon sa isang makatarungan at malinis na enerhiya.
But an energy transition that overlooks the needs, voices, and priorities of people living in countries dependent on the extraction of oil, gas, and minerals will undermine and already fragile economies and also impede effective climate action.
Certain projects will become economically unviable, and we need to know which ones they are.
Information is power, as they say.
Стремительно возрастет спрос на некоторые полезные ископаемые, которые необходимы при производстве, транспортировке и хранении электричества, которое добывается при помощи ветра, воды и солнца.
E tratar a mineração com o enfoque de sempre só vai piorar os danos e problemas existentes.
Мы будем использовать наш опыт, чтобы обеспечить справедливый переход к более чистому энергетическому будущему.
Une transition qui centre les voix des personnes qui dépendent actuellement du gaz, du pétrole et des mines.
Sa loob ng 20 taon, ang Publish What You Pay ay nakikipaglaban upang maging bukas at accountable ang extractive industries. Ang laban na ito ay mahalaga noon at higit na mahalaga ngayon.
And just a reminder that you can see that film in French, Spanish, Russian and Arabic on the Publish What You Pay website, on our social media channels as well. It's also in the expo area of this event for the rest of the day today. So please do make sure to watch it and share it. I would now like to invite Gloria Majiga, who is a member of the Global Council, to join us and to present the governance manual updates, which we are presenting today for adoption. So Gloria, if you would like to join us. Yes, here's Gloria coming through. Please take it away with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. Hi, everyone. I am Gloria Majiga. It's nice to be back in a place where I know almost everyone is, even though I can't see everyone, but it feels really great to be here. So as most of you will know, I am the representative for the Anglophone Africa region in the Publish What You Pay Global Council for the next few minutes at least, until the next council is ushered in. And this afternoon, I'm going to be sharing with you a brief presentation on the updates on the Publish What You Pay Global, the governance manual, which we're inviting all of you to endorse and adopt in this meeting. I was part of the advisory committee that led the process of the review of the governance manual, and the committee consisted of Olena, who was the chairperson, and Adnan, who's also a member of the Global Council, and Fatima, who is from the Africa Steering Committee, and Alan and Susan, who are from the Publish What You Pay board. Next slide, please. Now, the governance manual is the point of reference for all governance matters relating to the global network. It's basically our handbook or our blueprint, and sort of guides everything that we do, how we make decisions. It guides the governance of the Global Council, the regional steering committees, and the International Secretariat as well. It also details the operating principles that all coalitions commit to upholding when they're joining Publish What You Pay movement. It was first adopted in 2015, and it has been adopted, it has been updated every 3 years. I think as Olena had said in her presentation that in Senegal, we were also able to review the manual. And so this is normal procedure. It's updated and reviewed every 3 years. And it's nothing out of the ordinary. So in 2022, which is this year, we have seen a proposal of about 15 updates. And there are different updates that occur in the process, and some of them require the approval of the Global Assembly, and some of them can be approved by the reviewing committee, which is the committee that I had mentioned at the start of my presentation. And so out of the 15 proposals, 4 of them require your approval today as a Global Assembly. And all of these were shared with all members through emails in 5 different languages. So hopefully everyone has been able to access them and read through them. There was an online survey in April in 5 different languages, and we saw 27 people responding. And between March and May, we held a variety of regional meetings, and we had over 230 participants where everybody was able to provide inputs through a discussion within their region. Next slide, please. Now, the proposed updates, as I said, these are the 4 that we're discussing that require your adoption as a Global Assembly. The first was to remove the reference to an indicator framework for assessing compliance with membership standards being regularly updated. And the second was that we delete explicit reference to sanctions process is secretariat role description. So the sanctions process remains in place. It's just a description that it is the role of the secretariat. So these first 2 updates are quite minor, and they just provide minor edits to the text in the manual. However, the second 2 updates are the ones that are a bit more substantive, and that is, the first one is to allow for the Global Council mandate to be extended by a maximum of 6 months if the Global Assembly cannot be held exactly 3 years from the previous one, but not longer than 6 months. So this has come into light following the very extraordinary circumstances that we faced during the COVID pandemic, where we saw that we were not able to hold the Global Assembly, and we needed the governance of the movement to continue in exceptional circumstances. So as you can see, it does allow for that, but it also limits any term extensions. And the second major amendment is to allow for the Global Reach candidates for the Global Council to self-nominate. So as you know, in the Global Council, we also have 2 Global Reach seats. And the proposal was that we allow for candidates to self-nominate for this seat. And this was something that was being informed by practice, of course, hence why it was proposed to be institutionalized into the formal document itself. Next slide, please. So overall, on these proposed amendments, there were quite a good number of respondents, and the survey supported all 4 updates, as did the majority of participants who were consulted through the regional meetings. However, there were some strong objections to the principle of self-nomination for any Global Council seat, as this was felt to not be rigorous and not promoting the principle of transparency in the way of identifying candidates for those roles. Next slide, please. So there was also more feedback on other areas during the regional meetings that came up in the discussions, and some of these included the use of working groups to support better coordination on governance and strategy from national to global level. Another proposal was to consider undertaking an audit of PWYP's global governing bodies. And lastly, there was a proposal to consider reflecting the different civic space contexts for different national coalitions within the governance manual. And this is something that the incoming Global Council will have to be taking into consideration as part of their work and also potential action. Next slide, please. Now, the advisory group, as I had indicated, we haven't considered the inputs from the surveys, but also the discussion in the regional meetings. We had proposed that we adopt all the proposed updates with the exception of the self-nomination for the Global Reach seats. So in this case, the nominations by national coalitions for candidates for Global Reach seats would remain. So on your screen now, I'm sure you have seen a poll that has popped up, and what you are needed to do is to indicate whether you choose to adopt the updates to the governance manual. All you have to do is vote. It's disappeared from my screen, Stephanie, so I hope it's still on everybody else's screen.
Thanks, Gloria. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so if you go to the poll area of the session, then you should be able to indicate whether you agree to adopt the updates. I'm sure Stephanie had shared a bit more on how to navigate the platform, and you can come in, Stephanie.
Thanks, Gloria. No, you did it. So I can see we've got 11 votes so far. So yeah, if people could go to the menu on the right side of your screen, if you're on a laptop, make sure you're in the session tab, and then below that you'll see that there's a tab called polls. It's just next to the chat tab, and if you select the polls tab, you'll see there's a short survey. You can either vote to approve or not approve the changes to the governance manual. So if everyone could please go ahead and vote. I can see that we've got 24 votes, and we've got about 87 people in the session. So if as many of those people as possible could find that poll and vote, that would be great. We can also come back to this, I think, at the end of the session to see the results. So far, it's looking very encouraging with 28 votes to approve and none to not approve.
Great. So I think so far it does look very good. So I think my work here is done. Thank you so much, Stephanie, and thank you, everyone. Please remember to vote and to see the results. Thank you, Steph.
Thank you so much, Gloria. So that poll is going to be open. So please just do go ahead and vote as we carry on. But for the sake of time, we'll move on. So I'm going to present now the other document that we're bringing to the Global Assembly for approval, and this is the Publish What You Pay Global Gender Policy. So this policy has been developed as a direct response to a few factors. One of those is the growing understanding of how the extractive sector impacts men and women differently, but also really that growing understanding that Publish What You Pay has a role to play in understanding and mitigating those impacts. The policy is also a response to a demand from Publish What You Pay members to identify specific approaches and targets by which we can play that role, both institutionally and in our campaigning and advocacy. And lastly, there was also a clear recommendation from the outgoing Global Council at the Global Assembly in Dakar in 2019 to develop a policy of this kind. And that is a recommendation that the current Global Council took on in developing this policy. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the policy is to provide a vision, message, and coordinated approach to Publish What You Pay's promotion of gender justice in our work, to promote member and institutional knowledge on gender justice and how it intersects with the extractive sector, to redefine and shape a new culture in Publish What You Pay, and to communicate our position on feminism and gender justice, both internally and to a wider audience. So the policy is structured in 4 priority areas. That's people and culture, structures and policies, advocacy and campaigns, and communications. Next slide, please. In terms of application, the policy applies to all members of Publish What You Pay's governing bodies. That's the board, the Global Council, and the Africa Steering Committee. It also applies to Publish What You Pay International Secretariat and to all national Publish What You Pay coalitions and their member organizations around the world. So by adopting this policy, we would all commit as governing bodies, as the Secretariat, and as national coalitions to be accountable to the principles of this policy and accountable for its implementation. Next slide, please. So before I go into detail to present the main aspects of the policy, I just want to recap how we got to the point of having this final draft to bring to the Global Assembly today. So following discussions with the Global Council in November last year, the Secretariat engaged an external gender consultant who has been leading global consultations for the past 6 months, including a series of focus groups in English and French, which were held in February, with 13 members participating. And there was also an online survey in 5 languages in April, which gathered 67 responses. With these initial consultations, which were to understand Publish What You Pay members' priorities and concerns around gender equality in the context of our work, the consultant created a first draft of the policy, and this was shared with members, again in 5 languages, for feedback. And we received comments from 22 members in 20 coalitions on this first draft. Next slide, please. So what we heard from members was that the majority of them, more than 65%, felt that the draft policy reflected the long-term intention of their coalition, and nearly 30% thought that it reflected their long-term intentions to some degree. There was just one respondent who indicated that the policy did not reflect the long-term intention of his coalition at this point, but that person also noted in his comments that the coalition was very open to learning more about these issues and how they relate to their work around natural resource governance. Next slide, please. In terms of the ambition of the policy, again, the majority of respondents felt that the indicators were ambitious enough. Across all 4 priority areas, more than 75% of the respondents thought that. Where specific feedback indicated scope for more ambition, we did adjust the indicators to reflect this, but we were also careful not to go beyond areas where others had expressed concern that the ambition might be too high or might make the policy unachievable. So, of course, as with any global policy, there is a balance to find, and some may think that we're going too slowly and others might think that we're going too fast. We do need to find that balance, and the feedback indicates that the majority feel that this policy is taking us at the right speed and in the right direction. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, the policy has been shared in 5 languages with all of the lists. So I hope many of you have already had a chance to look at it and to share your feedback. Each of the priority areas has indicators of success that are to be reached by 2025 and by 2030. So there's a staggered targets in this policy. And I'm going to take us through all of the indicators for the 4 priority areas. So this is a bit dense, but I think it's important that we're really clear on what all of these indicators are. So for the people and culture area, by 2025, the indicators of success are for a designated gender focal person to be responsible for ensuring implementation of and championing the global gender policy within each governing body. That there is capacity building on gender equality and inclusion that's provided across all governing levels, and that there is zero tolerance for gender-based discrimination across the governing bodies. The targets by 2030 are for Publish What You Pay coalitions to include active gender champions, that there is zero tolerance for gender-based discrimination within all coalitions, and that all Publish What You Pay leaders actively champion the rights and participation of women, girls, and marginalized groups within the movement. Next slide, please. For structures and policies, the targets for 2025 are that the global gender policy is well known by a majority of coalitions, that a minimum of 50% of the Global Council, Board, and Africa Steering Committee members are women. At the national level, that coalitions take specific action to promote women as national coordinators or directors or presidents, including considering alternating mandates, and where applicable, that all Publish What You Pay policies, for example, around childcare or parental leave, reflect the principles of this policy. And by 2030, that annual work plans also reflect the principles of this policy, and importantly, that they include a budget for implementation, that a minimum of 50% of coalition leadership roles are held by women, and that there is a specific allocation of leadership seats in national coalitions and in the governing bodies for other marginalized groups. Next slide, please. In terms of advocacy and campaigning, the targets are that those campaign initiatives include a feminist lens and specific objectives and strategies to promote gender justice where appropriate, and that those initiatives have a clear vision, consistent message, and coordinated approach to advancing gender justice in the extractive industries. And by 2030, the advocacy and campaign initiatives use measurable objectives relating to gender equality and social inclusion, and that intersectional gender power analysis and gender responsive risk analysis are conducted as part of advocacy and campaign design. Next slide, please. Finally, for communications, the targets for 2025 are that regional and global communications use gender-sensitive and inclusive language and images, and that they are based on concepts of inclusion, empowerment, and support, upholding the rights and dignity of women and girls. And by 2025, the targets are that national coalitions and leaders consistently communicate in a way that reflects the principles of this policy, including using gender-inclusive language and images. And by 2030, that Publish What You Pay is a visible and recognized ally of the wider feminist and gender justice movement at national and global levels. Next slide, please. I realize that was quite a dense presentation. Thank you for staying with me. Our recommendation today, based on the feedback that was received through the consultation process, is that the Global Assembly adopts the first ever Publish What You Pay global gender policy. And there is a provision that that policy is reviewed within 3 years or earlier if needed. So we have another poll, which I've heard has just opened, and I'd like to invite the Global Assembly members to please go to the poll and to indicate whether you adopt the gender policy or not. So please, if everyone can go and vote, and as soon as you've voted, you will be able to see the results of that vote. I believe that my screen has frozen, so I want to just check that you can still hear me.
I can still hear you, Steph.
Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, great. Okay, so I can see that we have 27 votes on the gender policy, 26 to adopt, 1 not to adopt. So please do continue to complete that poll. I think we can just carry on while we move to the next section, and we'll come back to those polls at the end of the session. We are running just a couple of minutes late. I'm just flagging that for the interpreters. I hope that we will be able to run just a few minutes over time. Apologies for that. I would now like to invite all of the new members of the Global Council to request to share their audio and video, and I will invite you all to come up onto the screen where you will be able to introduce yourselves to the Global Assembly. Everyone please mute their audio. There's some echo on the line. I'm not sure where that's coming from, but if everyone can please mute their audio. Evelyn, I think that might be your line. So I'm just going to remove Evelyn just for now, and hopefully, Evelyn, if you can just request again, then I can let you back in. Oh, here she is. Evelyn. Oh, okay, great. Right, let's kick off, if that's okay. I think we've got almost everyone on here. I can see that we're missing Fuad, we're missing Georges, and then Evelyn. But let's kick off with the group that we do have here. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to hand the floor first to Saraswati to introduce herself and share a bit about what she's excited about on the journey. Saraswati, do you want to unmute and go ahead and introduce yourself? Thank you.
Yeah, many thanks, Stephanie. Hello, everyone. I am Saraswati Svetlana from India, and I'm the National Coordinator of the Mineral Inheritors Rights Association. It's the Publish What You Pay India Coalition. I'm really honored to be part of the Global Council representing the Asia Pacific region. I'm extremely delighted to work with all the esteemed members of the Global Council in furthering the current objectives of the Publish What You Pay, as well as enabling, nurturing, and exchanging new ideas for future initiatives. I completely agree and would like to reiterate to what Elisa and Olena at the beginning of the session said, and I'm sure we'll be able to strengthen transnational campaigns, amplify our advocacy efforts, and build strong solidarity across coalitions at a time when the civic space in most of our regions is under severe threat. Thank you so much, Publish What You Pay, for providing me this space. Our coalitions in this Asia-Pacific region greatly appreciate the significant work that PWYP has done over these 20 years. So a big congratulations once again, and look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Et nous avons hâte de continuer à travailler ensemble.
Thank you so much, Saraswati. Monday, could I ask you to go next, please?
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone on this platform. My name is Monde Osasa, and I am from Nigeria. I work with the African Center for Leadership Strategy and Development. The acronym of our center is Center LSD. And let me begin by thanking the outgoing management of Publish What You Pay from all that has transpired from the time the Global Assembly started till now. A lot of learning came to me, and they have given us a lot of things to chew. And so I have also read through the TOR for the Global Council members, which I'm part of, and it raises a lot of hope. It means that there's a lot of work to be done. So I'm committing on behalf of Anglophone Africa that I represent, that we'll do all that we can to make sure that we deliver on our assignments. There are a lot of recommendations that has been made by Lina and her colleague that spoke last. And I think that those recommendations have been noted. And as we resume later on today, I think that
Monday, I think we've just lost you just at the end there, but I think we heard most of what you were saying. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask. Yeah, okay. Ida, can I ask you to go next, please?
Okay, thank you. My name is Aida Gamboa. I'm from Peru, from the organization NDAR, Environmental Right and Natural Resources, and represent the network RELIE from Latin America. And I'm very happy and very enthusiastic in sharing experience with the other members and represent the demands of the region. Now we have a very difficult situation in terms of environmental defenders, human rights, participation, and transparency in the extractive sector, among other issues. So I'm very happy to be here with all the members. And yeah, thanks, Publish What You Pay, for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Gracias, Aida. Georges, would you like to go next?
Merci Stéphanie, j'espère que vous m'entendez. Attendez.
There's a bit of an echo, George. Maybe if you could use headphones, if you have them. We'll come back to you, George. I'll ask Nora if she could go next, please. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Nora Hassan. I'm a clinical pharmacist. I'm from Baghdad, Iraq, the capital of Iraq. I'd be representing MENA region, Middle East and North Africa. Proudly, I'm the youngest member. And my mission or my goal for the next 3 years is to make sure that young adults' voices and thoughts are being shared and heard. And not every youth adult need to be overqualified to have his voice being heard, especially in the MENA region, as 60% of people is youth. And we're the ones who are affected by the fossil fuel industry and all that comes with it.
Thank you so much, Nora. That's a great message for all of the young people in Publish What You Pay. Evelyn, could I ask you to go next? Evelyn, you hear us? Okay, we'll just wait while Evelyn is sorting her audio. So I'll ask Carly to go next, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carly Oboth. I live in Washington, D.C., and I'm the director for the National Coalition of Publish What You Pay in the United States. Prior to joining Publish What You Pay, I worked at Global Witness for several years on responsible mineral sourcing. I'm really thrilled to be joining the Global Council representing North America and Europe because I'm really excited by the evolution of Publish What You Pay's vision. And I see a real opportunity to leverage our collective expertise and 2 decades of experience advocating for a more transparent, accountable extractive sector to support a fair and just and equitable energy transition. So thank you. I'm looking forward to being part of this council.
Great, thank you so much, Carly. Maria, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hola, hola a todos. Hello, Maria Lia Ramos. And along with Evelyn, we represent the Global Reach on the Global Council. Very excited to be joining the council again with all of you. And Nora, yay, young people. We need more young people in this movement. Yeah, I currently co-lead Oxfam's Extractive Industries Global Program, but I'm a human rights activist at heart, having worked across Latin America, Africa, elsewhere. And I think I'm most excited about solidarity, just our strength in numbers. I mean, the map that Elena showed about the growing number of coalitions is exciting to be able to support each other, to hold each other when there's a civic space crisis, when those in our network are under threat. And I'm also excited about the future. I think as a network, we are very well positioned to apply our collective strategies, our campaigning chops to address the climate crisis. So thank you all for the welcome and the space.
Thank you, Maria. Georges, would you like to try again?
Can you hear me?
I'm really sorry, George. Unfortunately, there's an echo, but maybe you could, it's great to see you at least, and maybe you could just type your message and your introduction in the chat, and hopefully we will also have other opportunities to have more interaction with Global Council members and Publish What You Pay members. Evelyn, would you like to try as well? Evelyn, I'm not sure if you can hear me. If you can, if you could unmute and we'll see if the sound is better. So I think Evelyn is trying to unmute. Yes, she's nodding. Okay, just in the meantime, Evelyn, I'll ask Fatima if she would like to unmute and say hello.
Hello,
Все, меня зовут Фатима.
I am Fatima Diallo. I'm very pleased and delighted to join the council, the
Я
Global
очень рада
Council.
присоединиться к глобальному совету.
And I am glad that I was involved over the last year.
Я очень рада, что вот последний год работала со всеми.
and I am a member of a Center of Research and Action who works globally about human rights issues. I spent my career in the academic world as a militant on all those issues within the UN system. So it's a great pleasure to be working with you and to be joining this coalition from Senegal. And would like to what really makes my heart beat. It's the issue with women inclusion, the energy transition, and the rights of the communities. And I would like to really be involved heavily on those issues and contribute to improve that. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fatima. Evelyn and George, I want to try one more time, but then we'll have to move on just because we're already gone into interpreters extra time. Evelyn, can you try to unmute? No. Okay, no problem. We got halfway there. Seeing you, that was great. Thank you very much. George, shall we try third time lucky? George, can you unmute?
Can you hear me now? Yes. I am George Paga. Hello, from Gabon. I work with youth in the civil society organization. I am also a strategic advisor for Publish What You Pay, as well as a member of the EITI. I've been involved in campaigns about human rights for quite a few years and the fight against corruption, and this is something that we have in Gabon. I've been involved in all the initiatives from the coalition, both at national, at local and international level. So I'm very, very happy to be able to work as a new member of the General Council as well as the Secretariat in order to progress and help our movement to progress. I represent the French-speaking countries, and I'm very excited and enthusiastic to ensure that all the issues which are being raised by the CSOs about the governance of the extractive industries and how natural resources are managed in Africa and in the French-speaking countries, it will be at the heart of our agenda. We've published What You Pay, especially when we talk about redistribution, the fight against corruption. They have done a remarkable, outstanding work on that. I'm not going to take more of your time, but as a representative of the French-speaking countries, this is what I would like to do and be part of this dynamism in achieving global targets and to do it at the global scale. So I'm very happy to be part of this large family, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Thank you, everyone, so much. And thank you to the interpreters. I realise the sound quality is not great. Thank you for everyone for making the effort to join. And we really look forward to working with all of you. We'll say goodbye for now and just move to the final part of our session. So we have been hearing a little bit there about the fact that we have the youngest ever Global Council member joining us in Nora. And so that's a good moment for us to screen again the film that we put together again for this 20th anniversary, featuring the young voices from the Publish What You Pay movement. So we will go to that film now. Thank you.
Growing up my normal morning walk. Sorry, it's up a hill, so forgive me for panting.
شهدت العاصمة بغداد خلال الفترة السابقة 22 يوم من العواصف الرملية.
Las sequías se vienen pronunciando mucho más con cada año.
Give it a few hours and I won't be able to take this walk that I'm taking right now because it will be ridiculously hot. This is an effect of climate change.
The good thing is that we already know the solution. We have to phase out from burning fossil fuel
in favor of clean energy sources.
So how do we make sure that energy transition benefits citizens in my country?
We simply cannot afford to continue allowing powerful corporate interests and greedy politicians to monopolize the decision-making process.
Les décideurs doivent tenir compte de toutes les parties prenantes. Le genre, les populations autochtones, les jeunes, les enfants, parce que ce sont eux qui sont les plus affectés par les problèmes de crise climatique.
Pero lamentablemente no se les toma muchas veces en consideración.
يعتمد الاقتصاد العراقي وبنسبة 97% على عائدات النفط والقطاع الاستخراجي.
It's going to be much harder for countries that rely on oil and gas to adapt when fossil fuel demand inevitably falls.
حيث أن العراق لا يمتلك البنى التحتية التي تسمح له بالانتقال إلى الطاقة النظيفة، وعمل شيء كهذا في هذا الوقت قد يسبب العديد من المشاكل.
Wealthier, higher-emitting producer countries that have benefited the most from fossil fuel production should be the first to prioritize phasing out fossil fuels.
They need to provide the finance and technology to support the countries in the global south to mitigate and adopt the climate change.
Обеспечить возможности для того, чтобы проверенные технологии и ресурсы распространялись и были открытыми для развивающихся стран, чтобы те, в свою очередь, могли их использовать для смягчения последствий от изменения климата и продвигать низкоуглеродную экономику.
Phasing out fossil fuels also means increased demand for minerals like cobalt, nickel, copper, zinc, and others that power clean energy technology.
So how do we avoid replicating the negative impact of fossil fuel?
PWYP играет важную роль в продвижении открытости и прозрачности в добывающих отраслях.
It is bringing communities, experts, and campaigners together to ensure the community's rights over natural resource, as well as a just transition happens on the ground.
Energy transition is everybody's business. First world countries, third world countries, developing countries, developed countries, the poor, the rich, the old, the young. So we need to come together, band together, and begin to solve this problem. Where there is unity, there will be victory.
So we're coming to the end of our Global Assembly, and allow me to just say a few closing words, just 2-3 minutes. Thanks for bearing with us. I know we're a little late. So it's been a week packed with amazing conversations. And I hope you've enjoyed and learned from the exchanges. I also hope that you had a chance to visit the expo and the booth prepared by several coalitions were really super interesting. And I personally really enjoyed the speed networking and the opportunity to have a chat with several of you. It was almost as if we were on a coffee break in an in-person conference center. So now is the time to say goodbye from me, and that's very difficult. PWYP has been my second family over the past few years. My children haven't seen much of me as I traveled from one coalition to another. And it's a tough job to coordinate such a diverse group of people, but it's also been the most rewarding experience in my entire life. I've been humbled by your courage, your passion, and your dedication to make the world a better, fairer place. And I will always stand by your struggles, so you can count on me in the future. Before I close, there are 3 people I would like to thank in particular. The first one is Carlo Mella. Many of you will know him. He is the chair of the board of Publish What You Pay, and he has helped me navigate the challenges of running an international organization over the past 6 years. The second person is Olyena Pavlenko, the outgoing chair of the Global Council, who has taught me so much about courage and resilience. Even in the midst of war and forced relocation, Olyena has showed up with clarity of purpose and a smile on her face to every single one of my meetings with her. And last but not least, Stephanie Rochford, who has been my second in command at the Secretariat, has held my hand and guided me through the movement when I first started, and continues to be one of my most trusted advisors. I will cherish the memories I have of all of you, and I also want to congratulate this new Global Council and their members on their election, and wish them every success in their endeavors. And with that, let me thank the interpreters. Thank you for all your hard work in the background. And I declare this Global Assembly 2022 closed, and wish you a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you, everybody. Merci. Au revoir. Do svidania. Ciao, ciao.